He liked control. That was the truth about him. He liked knowing where his money was going, how his meetings would end, what tomorrow's numbers would look like. He had built his fortune from nothing, and that taught him one thing early in life. Emotions could distract you, but focus could make you rich. People admired him. When he stepped out of his car in front of his office tower, employees straightened their backs. His suits were always perfect. His schedule was tight. His words were sharp and clear. He was the kind of man who could turn a small opportunity into $1 million deal. But at home, things were not as smooth. His wife used to laugh more. In the early years of their marriage, she would wait for him by the door when he came home late, pretending to be angry but smiling the whole time. They would sit in the kitchen at midnight, eating simple food and talking about dreams. Back then, he promised her something. He told her that when they finally had a child, he would slow down. He said no meeting would be more important than his family. He said money was just a tool, not a master. Years passed, and his company grew faster than anyone expected. With growth came pressure. Investors, contracts, competitors. His phone never stopped ringing. When she became pregnant, he was happy, truly happy. He bought everything she could ever need. The best doctors, the best hospital, a beautifully decorated nursery. He installed cameras, security systems, and hired extra staff to make sure she was comfortable. But what she wanted most was time. During the first few months of pregnancy, he tried to attend doctor appointments. He would sit beside her, holding her hand, listening to the baby's heartbeat. For a few minutes, he felt calm in a way he never felt inside boardrooms. Then work became heavier. One important project turned into 3. An international partner wanted to close a deal before the end of the quarter. There were flights to catch, dinners to attend, hands to shake. He started missing appointments. "I'll make it to the next one," he would say while adjusting his tie. She would nod and smile. "I understand. Just be careful." But the house grew quieter. She spent more evenings alone in the living room, resting her hand on her growing belly. Sometimes she would send him photos of baby clothes she bought. Sometimes she would call just to tell him the baby kicked for the first time. Often, he was in meetings. He would text back short replies. "That's great. We'll talk later. Busy right now." He told himself he was doing this for them. As her due date came closer, her body grew heavier, and so did her heart. She was not weak. She was not dramatic. But pregnancy made her more sensitive, and being alone made it worse. One evening, he came home later than usual. It was past midnight. The house lights were dim. She was sitting at the dining table with unpaid medical forms in front of her. "You said you'd be home for dinner," she said quietly. "I had a meeting," he replied, dropping his keys on the table. "It ran late. You didn't even call." "My phone died." She looked at him for a long moment. "Your phone never dies." He sighed, already tired. "Why are we arguing about this again? I'm working for us." "I don't need more money," she said softly. "I need you." He rubbed his forehead. "I'm under pressure. Can you please not start this tonight?" She did not raise her voice. That made it worse. "When the baby comes, will you also be under pressure?" The question stayed in the air. "Of course I'll be there," he said, almost offended. "Don't say things like that." But she had learned something during those months. Promises were easy. Presence was harder. The next week was critical for his company. A major investor from overseas was flying in. If the deal was signed, it would double his company's value overnight. He had prepared for months. On the morning of the meeting, she looked pale. "Are you okay?" he asked while buttoning his jacket. "I didn't sleep well," she replied. "I feel strange. Maybe it's nothing." "You're still early," he said. "The doctor said there's time." She nodded, but she held his hand longer than usual before he left. "Call me if you need anything," he said quickly. "I always do," she answered. The meeting began at noon. The conference room was filled with serious faces and expensive watches. Papers were spread across the table. His phone was on silent beside him, screen facing down. An hour into the discussion, his phone vibrated. He ignored it. A few minutes later, it vibrated again. One of his partners glanced at him. He forced a polite smile and flipped the phone over for a second. Her name. He frowned slightly. She knows I'm in a meeting, he thought. He turned the phone face down again. The vibration came back. Then again, his jaw tightened. He felt embarrassed in front of his guests. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, stepping out into the hallway. He checked his phone. 5 missed calls. He called back immediately, but it rang only once before disconnecting. Before he could try again, one of his assistants approached him. "They're asking for you inside. They're ready to finalize the numbers." He looked at the phone screen. Another call. Frustration rose in his chest. "Why now?" he muttered. He answered, but the line cut off. He imagined another emotional conversation. Another complaint about him not being home enough. He felt pressure from both sides. Business inside the room, personal tension outside. When the phone rang again, something in him snapped. "This can wait," he told himself. Without thinking deeply, without asking why she would call so many times in a row, he opened his contact settings. His thumb hovered for a second. Then he pressed block. The screen went silent. He took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and walked back into the meeting room as if nothing had happened. Inside, the conversation flowed smoothly. Numbers were negotiated. Smiles returned. Hands were shaken. By late afternoon, the deal was signed. Applause filled the room. "Congratulations," someone said, patting his back. "This changes everything." He smiled, feeling powerful and relieved. Months of stress had paid off. He imagined headlines, growth charts, success stories. When he finally sat alone in his office later that evening, the building quiet around him, he picked up his phone again. For a moment, he felt a small sense of unease. He checked his call log. More than 20 missed calls. Not just from her, but from an unknown number as well. His stomach tightened. He quickly unblocked her number. He tried calling. It rang and rang. No answer. He tried again. This time it went straight to voicemail. A strange fear began to rise in his chest. He stood up from his chair, suddenly unable to sit still. He grabbed his jacket and car keys. On the drive home, the city lights blurred in front of him. He kept calling. No response. He told himself she was probably resting. Maybe her phone battery died. Maybe she was upset. But deep inside, something felt wrong. When he reached the house, the lights were on, but the silence was different. Too still. He stepped inside and called her name. No answer. On the dining table, her phone charger lay plugged into the wall. Her phone was not there. His heart began to pound harder. And for the first time that day, the deal he had just signed felt small. Very small. The house felt colder than it should have. He stood in the doorway for a few seconds, listening. No footsteps. No soft sound from the bedroom. No reply when he called her name again. His confidence from earlier in the day drained away, replaced by a slow, rising fear. He walked through the living room. Her shoes were not by the door. Her bag was gone. That was when he noticed it. The hospital folder was missing from the table. His heart skipped. He pulled out his phone again and called her, straight to voicemail. He tried the unknown number that had called earlier. This time, someone answered. "Hello," a calm female voice said. "Yes, this number called me earlier." "Who is this?" he asked quickly. "This is the hospital," the voice replied. "Are you the husband?" The word husband hit him harder than expected. "Yes," he said. "Where is my wife?" There was a pause. Just half a second. But it felt long. "She was admitted earlier today," the nurse said. "She came in by ambulance." His hand tightened around the phone. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "We tried," the nurse said gently. "Multiple times." His throat went dry. "How is she?" Another pause. "She's in surgery right now," the nurse replied. "You should come as soon as possible." He didn't ask questions. He didn't argue. He ran. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Every red light felt personal, like the world was trying to stop him. His mind replayed the calls, the blocked number, his thumb pressing that button. She probably just went into early labor, he told himself. Everything will be fine. But the fear in his chest refused to quiet. When he arrived, the hospital lights were too bright. The smell of disinfectant hit him immediately. He rushed to the desk, barely able to control his voice. My wife, she was brought in today. She's pregnant. The nurse looked at her screen, then at him. Her expression softened in a way that made his stomach drop. Please sit, she said. I don't want to sit, he replied. I want to see her. I understand, she said calmly. But the doctor will speak with you shortly. He sat anyway. His leg bounced uncontrollably. Around him, people whispered, cried, laughed quietly. Life continued, unaware that his world was hanging by a thread. Minutes passed. Then a doctor approached. A tired man. Gentle eyes. You the husband? The doctor asked. Yes, he said, standing up quickly. Where is she? Is the baby okay? The doctor nodded slowly. Your daughter is alive. The word daughter barely registered. And my wife, he asked. The doctor took a breath. There were complications during delivery. Severe bleeding. The hallway seemed to tilt. We did everything we could. The doctor continued. She asked for you many times. His ears rang. Can I see her? The doctor hesitated. I'm sorry, he said. You can see her after. After. He didn't understand the word at first. After what? Then it hit him. No, he whispered. No, you mean. I'm very sorry, the doctor said quietly. The world did not shatter loudly. It collapsed inward. He stood there, unable to move, unable to cry. His body refused to react. It was as if his mind stepped away to protect itself. She kept calling. The doctor said softly, She didn't understand why you weren't answering. His phone slipped from his hand and hit the floor. Later, he couldn't remember how he got to the room. He couldn't remember walking down the hall. He only remembered seeing her. She looked peaceful, too peaceful. Her hair was brushed. Her face was calm, as if she were sleeping. But her chest did not rise. Her hand was cold when he held it. I'm here, he whispered. I'm here now. But she didn't hear him. A nurse placed a small bundle in his arms. His daughter. She was tiny, fragile, her face red and wrinkled. She let out a soft cry, then settled. He stared at her in shock. She was asking about you. The nurse said quietly, even when she was in pain. His knees weakened, and he sat down slowly, holding the baby close. He felt terrified. He had never held something so small, so dependent. She wanted you to know, the nurse added, hesitating. She tried until the end. Later that night, a nurse returned with a plastic bag. This belongs to her, she said. Inside was her phone. He picked it up with shaking hands. The screen lit up. Missed calls. Missed messages. He opened the contact. His name was there. Blocked. He closed his eyes as the truth crushed him. He had chosen silence. He had chosen control. And in doing so, he had missed the most important moment of her life. And the last. The days that followed felt unreal. The funeral was quiet. Too quiet for someone who had been so full of life. People spoke kind words, but none of them reached him. He stood beside the coffin holding his daughter, numb and empty. At night, the house felt unbearable. Every room reminded him of her. The chair where she used to sit. The half-folded baby clothes. The mirror where she practiced smiling, even when she was tired. He replayed their last conversation again and again. I need you. Those words echoed in his head. He realized something too late. She wasn't asking for perfection. She wasn't asking him to stop working forever. She just wanted to know she mattered. He sat alone one night, scrolling through old messages, photos she had sent, simple notes, small moments he never replied to properly. Tears finally came. Quiet, broken sobs he couldn't stop. He cried for her. He cried for the child she would never hold. He cried for the man he thought he was. Holding his daughter became the only thing that kept him steady. When she cried, he woke up. When she needed feeding, he learned. He fumbled, made mistakes, but he stayed. He didn't block anything anymore. He kept his phone on loud, even when sleeping, even when it buzzed at the wrong time, because now he understood something that money never taught him. Some calls never come again, and some silences last forever. The first morning without her felt wrong. The house woke up, but she didn't. Sunlight slipped through the curtains and landed on the empty side of the bed. He lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet. For years, silence had meant peace to him. Now it felt like punishment. Then the baby cried. The sound startled him. He sat up fast, heart racing. For a moment, he forgot where he was. He forgot everything. Then the crying came again, louder this time, and reality rushed back in. He was alone now. He lifted himself out of bed and walked slowly toward the nursery. His steps felt heavy, like the floor was pulling him down. He paused at the door, suddenly afraid. Afraid of doing something wrong. Afraid of holding her wrong. Afraid of failing someone else he loved. The baby cried harder. "I'm coming," he said, his voice low and unsure. He picked her up carefully, the way the nurse had shown him. She was so small that it scared him. Her fingers wrapped around his thumb without thinking, and something inside his chest tightened. "It's just you and me now," he whispered, though he wasn't sure he believed it yet. The days blended together after that. People came and went. Family members, staff, advisors. They offered help, food, kind words. He thanked them all, but none of it stayed with him. Their voices felt far away, like he was underwater. At night, when the house was finally quiet again, the memories came. He remembered her sitting on the couch, rubbing her belly slowly, watching him move around the room with his phone pressed to his ear. He remembered how she used to pause when he walked past, waiting for him to notice her. He hadn't. He walked into the nursery one evening and sat in the chair she had picked out months ago. She used to sit there sometimes, talking softly to her belly, imagining the future. He closed his eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said out loud. "I just thought there would always be more time." But time didn't answer him. The baby slept against his chest, warm and alive. He held her like that for hours, afraid to put her down, afraid of the quiet returning. Work didn't stop just because his world had. Emails stacked up. Meetings were requested. People needed decisions. At first, he ignored everything. Then one morning, his assistant came by and gently reminded him of his responsibilities. "You can take more time," she said, "but some things need your attention." He nodded. He put on a suit for the first time since the funeral. It felt strange, like wearing someone else's clothes. At the office, people spoke carefully around him. Their eyes carried pity, and he hated that more than silence. He went through the motions, signed papers, nodded at reports, but his mind was somewhere else. Every vibration of his phone made his chest tighten. He checked it constantly, even when there were no calls, especially when there were no calls. One afternoon, he found himself staring at his phone screen again, frozen. He had opened her last message. He had avoided it for days. It was simple. "I'm tired today, but I'm still smiling. Don't forget us." His hands shook as he locked the screen. That night, exhaustion finally caught up with him. He fell asleep on the couch, the baby resting nearby in her crib. He dreamed of her. She was standing in the kitchen, just like before. The light was soft. She looked healthy, calm. "You came late again," she said, but she wasn't angry. "I'm sorry," he replied. "I was busy." She smiled sadly. "You were always busy." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "Did you hear me when I called?" she asked. "I blocked the noise," he said without understanding the words. Her smile faded. "I wasn't noise." He woke up suddenly, gasping for air. The baby was crying. He picked her up, heart pounding, and held her close until the sound stopped. He didn't go back to sleep after that. Weeks passed. He learned how to change diapers at 3 a.m. He learned how to warm bottles properly. He learned that babies cry differently when they're hungry, tired, or just lonely. He learned patience in a way business never taught him. Some nights, he sat on the floor of the nursery, back against the wall, holding his daughter while tears ran silently down his face. He never cried loudly. He didn't want her to hear pain before she learned peace. One evening, while cleaning out a drawer, he found a small notebook. It was hers. Inside were notes, thoughts, little plans for the future. Teach her kindness before strength. Make sure she knows she's loved. Hope he slows down one day. He closed the notebook and pressed it to his chest. "I slowed down," he whispered. "I just did it too late." The world outside continued moving. The company announced record profits. Articles praised his leadership. People called him resilient. They didn't see him sitting alone at night, staring at a blocked contact he could never unblock. They didn't see him flinch when his phone rang during meetings, his hand shaking as he reached for it. He started leaving meetings early. He started saying no. At first, people were surprised. Then they adjusted. One day, his assistant asked carefully, "Are you okay?" He thought about the question for a long time before answering. "No," he said honestly, "but I'm learning how to live with that." He took his daughter to the park for the first time on a quiet afternoon. He pushed the stroller slowly, watching other families, mothers laughing, fathers chasing toddlers, moments he would never have. The loss sat beside him like a shadow. But when his daughter looked up at him and smiled for the first time, something shifted. The smile was small and unsure, but it was real. He smiled back. For the first time in weeks, the pain eased just a little. That night, he sat beside her crib, watching her sleep. He placed his phone on the table next to him, volume turned all the way up. "I won't miss you," he said softly. Not a single moment. The phone stayed silent, but he didn't turn it off, because now he knew the truth. Some people don't need your success. They need your presence. And losing that lesson once was already more than he could ever afford again. Life slowly began to demand more from him again. Bills arrived. Legal papers needed signatures. Decisions had to be made about the house, the staff, the company. He used to handle all of this without thinking. Now every choice felt heavier, as if it carried the weight of someone missing. He reduced the staff at home. The house felt too crowded with strangers, yet too empty without her. He kept one helper during the day, someone gentle and quiet, mostly for the baby. At night, he wanted the silence. It reminded him of what he had lost and what he needed to protect. Raising a child alone changed his sense of time. Days no longer followed meetings and deadlines. They followed feedings, naps, doctor visits, and cries that arrived without warning. Some nights he slept only an hour or two, sitting upright on the couch with his daughter against his chest because she wouldn't settle any other way. His body ached. His eyes stayed tired. But something else was happening. He was present. He noticed the way her face relaxed when she heard his voice. He noticed how she calmed when he walked slowly instead of rushing. He noticed small details he used to ignore in life. Light through windows, quiet mornings, the feeling of being needed. Still, grief didn't disappear just because responsibility grew. Some evenings, after putting the baby to sleep, he would walk into their bedroom and sit on the edge of the bed. Her side remained untouched. He couldn't bring himself to move her things. Her scarf still hung on the chair. Her scent had faded, but not completely. He talked to her sometimes. Not out loud at first, just in his thoughts. Later, words began to escape his lips. "She smiled today," he would say. "You would have loved it." There was no reply, but saying it anyway made the loneliness softer. Returning fully to work took time. When he finally resumed regular meetings, people noticed a change immediately. He listened more. He spoke less. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush to prove himself. When meetings went long, he ended them. "I need to be home," he said once. The room fell quiet. No one questioned him. At night, he stopped checking emails. He stopped carrying his phone everywhere like armor. He kept it near, but it no longer controlled him. One afternoon, while reviewing documents, he came across an old agreement he had signed years ago. It was a partnership deal that required long-term travel. At the time, he had agreed without hesitation. Now, he stared at it for a long time. Then he closed the folder. He declined it. That decision surprised everyone, including himself. A few weeks later, he visited the hospital where his daughter was born. He didn't plan to. His feet just carried him there while running errands nearby. The building looked the same. The smell felt the same. His chest tightened the moment he stepped inside. He walked the hallway slowly until he reached the ward. He stood there quietly, watching nurses move in and out of rooms. He remembered the phone call, the pauses, the tone. He didn't blame anyone there. He blamed himself. Before leaving, he spoke to the head nurse. He asked simple questions. How many women came in alone? How many didn't have family with them? How many struggled silently? The answers stayed with him. That night, he couldn't sleep. The next morning, he made a decision. He created a small fund through his company. Nothing flashy. Nothing announced publicly. It helped cover basic support for mothers who didn't have someone to stay with them during childbirth. Transport, a companion. Small things that made a big difference. He didn't put his name on it. He didn't want praise. He just wanted fewer unanswered calls in the world. Raising his daughter continued to humble him. There were days he failed. Days when he lost patience. Days when he felt overwhelmed and useless. On those days, guilt tried to convince him he wasn't enough. But every night he showed up, he read to her, even when she didn't understand words yet. He sang softly, even though he couldn't carry a tune. He learned her favorite lullaby by heart. One night, she refused to sleep. He walked the floor with her for hours, whispering stories he made up as he went. Stories about strength, kindness, and choosing people over pride. When she finally fell asleep, he realized something. He had spoken those words as much for himself as for her. There were moments of happiness, too. Her first laugh caught him completely off guard. It burst out suddenly, clear and bright. He froze, then laughed with her, tears filling his eyes. He wished she could hear it. He wished she could see this. But wishing didn't change reality. Acceptance came slowly in pieces. He stopped asking, what if every hour? He stopped replaying the meeting room scene over and over. The memory never left, but it softened around the edges. Pain turned into responsibility. Love turned into action. One evening, while cleaning, he finally packed away some of her clothes. Not all, just a few. He folded them carefully, thanking her silently for the life she gave him and the child she left behind. He placed the box high in the closet, not to forget, just to breathe. As months passed, his daughter grew stronger. She learned to sit, then crawl. She reached for him when she was scared. She smiled when she saw him enter the room. He became her safe place. And slowly, that became his purpose. One night, after a long day, he sat beside her crib and watched her sleep. Her chest rose and fell gently. The room was quiet, peaceful. He placed his phone on the table, screen facing up. No missed calls. No messages. Just silence. He didn't fear it anymore. He had learned to listen when it mattered. He leaned closer and whispered, "I'm here." And this time, it was true. Time did what it always does. It moved forward, whether he was ready or not. Years passed quietly. His daughter grew from a fragile newborn into a curious child with bright eyes and endless questions. She learned to walk by holding on to the edge of the couch, falling again and again, never afraid to try. Every time she fell, she looked at him first. Not to cry, but to check if he was there. He always was. Their mornings became a rhythm. He woke early, prepared breakfast, packed small bags, tied tiny shoes with clumsy fingers. He learned how to braid hair by watching videos late at night. He learned which stories made her laugh and which ones made her sleepy. Life wasn't perfect. Some days were hard. Some nights were lonely, but the chaos had meaning now. On her first day of school, she held his hand tightly at the gate. Children ran past them, laughing, shouting. Parents waved and smiled. "Will you stay?" she asked softly. "I'll be right here," he said. She nodded, took a deep breath, and walked inside. He stood there long after she disappeared into the building. He understood then what his wife had felt all those months. That quiet fear of doing something alone when you shouldn't have to. He whispered a thank you to her in his heart. At work, his life had changed too. The company was still successful, but it no longer owned him. He delegated more. He trusted others. He chose balance over constant growth. Some investors left. Others respected him more. He didn't chase every opportunity anymore. He chose carefully. People sometimes asked how he managed everything alone. He usually smiled and changed the subject. There were some truths he didn't explain. They were lived, not spoken. One afternoon, while helping his daughter with homework, she looked up at him suddenly. "Why don't I have a mom like other kids?" she asked. The question was gentle, curious, not angry. His chest tightened. He had prepared for this moment, but preparation didn't make it easy. He closed the book and sat beside her. You do have a mom, he said softly. She just lives in a different way now. She frowned. Where? He thought for a moment. In you. In the way you care. In the way you smile. In the way you're brave. She considered that. Did she love me? She asked. More than anything, he answered without hesitation. Did she love you? He swallowed. Yes. Then why did she leave? The room felt very still. She didn't choose to leave, he said carefully. Sometimes life makes choices we can't control. She nodded slowly, accepting it in her own way. That night, after she fell asleep, he sat alone in the living room. The old pain stirred, but it didn't overwhelm him anymore. It sat quietly beside him like an old scar. He had learned how to carry it. Every year on her birthday, they visited the same place. He brought white flowers. His daughter held one too. Hi, Mom, she would say simply. He never corrected her words. They were perfect. As his daughter grew older, she noticed his habits. He never ignored calls from her. Never. Even in meetings, even during events, he always answered. Is everything okay? People would ask. Yes, he would say. This matters. At night, his phone stayed on the table, not because he feared missing something, but because he respected the sound it could make. He had learned that silence could be chosen, but some silences were permanent. One evening, years later, after his daughter had gone to sleep, he found himself scrolling through old photos. Photos of a younger version of himself, of her mother smiling in simple clothes, before life became complicated. He stopped at one picture. She was sitting on the couch, holding her belly, looking straight into the camera. Her eyes were tired, but warm. He stared at it for a long time. I see it now, he whispered. Everything you tried to show me. He didn't feel crushing guilt anymore. He felt responsibility. He had turned loss into intention. He spoke at a small private gathering one day, invited by a group supporting families. He didn't talk about wealth or success. He talked about listening, about being present, about answering calls. Not everyone understood, but someone always did. When his daughter became a teenager, she once said something that stayed with him. You're always here, she said casually, not knowing the weight of her words. He smiled. That's the job, he replied. But inside, he knew it was more than that. It was a promise kept too late for one person, but right on time for another. One quiet night, after the house settled, he walked into the backyard and looked up at the sky. Stars scattered above him, distant and calm. I didn't answer, he said softly into the night, but I learned. The wind moved through the trees. There was no reply, and that was okay, because some lessons don't need answers. They need change, and he had changed, not because he wanted redemption, but because love demanded it.